What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Tony Shen. I'm back with another FL Studio beat tutorial. Today I'm going to go over 5 random tips and tricks in FL Studio that can help boost your creativity or just give you more tools in general when working on beats. For those of you who've been subscribed to my channel, like I know I've been saying a lot that I'm going to try to post consistently, and the last time I posted was like a while ago, but to be honest, like work has just been killing my time, and I'm working a full 9 to 5, and like my line of work, we just have like really busy seasons sometimes, so I haven't had like the time or energy to make be as consistent as I wanted to be. It's definitely a struggle to keep that balance, but in my next video that I'll be posting sometime next week is gonna go over like my experience working in music full time, and also just like finding that right balance and a bunch of like tips that I have for people who want to progress to that next level. But for this week, we're just gonna go over those 5 tricks. I've kind of like organized them into different categories, so there's like sub tricks to that one specific category. So let's just start with our very first one. First category of tips and tricks I want to go over is the tools that FL Studio offers, specifically in the piano roll. So when you're making your melodies and stuff like that, you can use these cool tools offered by FL Studio to kind of like give you more creativity and help boost your melody making process. As you can see here, we have a very basic chord progression. It's using like a flex synth, very basic. Here's what it is. I mean, it's not bad, it's just really boring and simple. First tool I want to go over in here is the arpeggiate tool. So what that does is it basically, here, I'll just kind of show you, right? It kind of just separates the chords into individual notes, and then you can control like the time multiplier, or like how many times it plays. Now what we can do with that is go back to your original melody and then maybe copy this an octave up. So copy it and then command up to bring it up an octave, and then only select this portion, and then go to your arpeggiate again, and then only arpeggiate this section so that you have your basic chords at the bottom, and then you have your arpeggiated version at the top. So and then you can do different subdivisions, you know? Right? And you have different rhythms you can do. Maybe this one? Okay, so that's the first tool. You go over the arpeggiator. You can use it to kind of like make your melodies, your basic chords, more interesting by giving it a rhythmic element and like a direction in the way that it arpeggiates. Next thing you could do is go to the tool and then use the randomize tool. Like if you think about it, when you're playing a melody by hand, you always have that like differences in velocities in which you hit the notes, right? And that kind of translates to more emotions and more randomness. The other tool I want to kind of talk about is just the strum tool. It allows you to offset the timing, right? If I drag this all the way up, you can see that it kind of strums, and that also adds like a little bit of randomness in your melody by kind of offsetting the timing a little bit. So it's not perfectly hitting together, which is kind of cool sometimes. By utilizing these tools, we just turn like a really easy basic progression into something a lot more interesting. So that's my first tip for you guys in FL Studio. Next tip I want to give to you guys is more on the concept of sound design. First one I want to go over is something that like you definitely come across like if you've just kind of experimented with the free stock plugins that FL Studio gives you, but it took me a while to figure out how to actually use this thing. It's called the layer tool. It's really helpful if you want to like design your own sound, or if you want to just stack sounds on top of each other without like copying the MIDI. For me, when I came up with my drum kits, like Tony Shen Slap Pack Volume 1 through 3, like all the drum kits that you guys have, link in the description below if you haven't gotten it already. It's free for you guys. Three really dope drum kits that I made. But when I was making these drum kits, I would use this tool a lot because it allows me to stack sounds on top of each other if I wanted to layer a clap with a rim, maybe, right? Maybe I want to like layer it with this rim. Instead of like doing this, which can get kind of disorganized if you have like a lot of these different tracks that you want to layer. What layer does is that it basically allows you to select, you highlight these two tools. So Control Shift and then click these to select them at the same time, and then just set children. And then when you play it on the layer, it plays both of these samples at the same time, you know. You can also like add adjustments to them, like you can pan them both, right? And you can like modulate certain things. You can also random, like if I'm layering a bell with like a key maybe, right? So if I'm like playing with a melody and then I'm just like stacking together two one shots, if you random it, it kind of like it randomizes like which one plays, and you get cool effects like. It's pretty cool, right? It just randomly like selects like which of these samples is playing, so you get just more randomness and more chaoticness to your melodies, which is pretty cool. You'll maybe add like a flute. Just all you have to do is, you know, select all of these and then set it as children, and then with the random, it just adds it to like the layers that you've already selected. So with random on, it basically just like alternates between randomly playing each of these three samples, which is pretty cool, right? Another sound design tool that I think is really cool is the Granulizer. It's a free FL Studio plugin that I actually have a video about. I'll link it in the description below so you can click it if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to use Voodoo Granulizer. It's really cool because it's basically a sampler and you can get super creative when sound designing. But let's say you load a sample in, right? Like a pad. It basically like allows you to chop up your sample into different grains and like, you know, space it differently, and it makes it sound really, really cool. Like it's basically playing that one sample in the Voodoo Granulizer, and then by playing around with these knobs, you can get really, really cool effects. And then you can also add this random element to it, where it just basically just skips around like different parts of the sample. And what you can do is actually go to Edison, and then make sure it's like the track that you're routed to. So let's just route this to the track that I added the Edison tool to. Control L to link, and then you can just kind of record it, right? So let's just record this, and then go to our Fruity our Granulizer. Let's open that up and then just record it. Right? It sounds kind of random right now, but if you add some drums to it, So I think knowing how to use Granulizer and layer, and then just coming up with creative ways to use those tools can get you a lot when it comes to the sound design phase. So that's tip number 2 when it comes to sound design. All right, tip number 3 is different ways to sidechain in FL Studio. So when you sidechain, I think like the sidechain that you guys are thinking about is like sidechaining your bass to your kick. What you can do is create cool effects. Like this is less like hip hop and more like if you want to do experimental music or EDM and stuff like that. Or if you want to do hip hop and try to implement it in a creative way. So what I'm going to do in this next tip is to just kind of play a loop that I came up with earlier and then show you how to like different ways you can sidechain your bass. So this is what it is without any sidechaining. First way to sidechain your bass is actually the easiest, and it's actually one of the ways that I use most because it's the most versatile, is actually just use your Fruity filter. So let's just open up a Fruity filter, right? First thing you want to do is make sure it's not actually doing anything. So make sure it's not cutting out anything. Right? Next thing you want to do is use this tool right here and kind of draw an envelope, right? Kind of look like this. And then make sure it's looping. So make loop and then make sure it's activated. Once you have this, it'll kind of just automate the volume in a way that looks like this shape. So it kind of gives us a movement, right? It's kind of like a eighth note sidechain. And then since like this beat is kind of slow with the drums, we can, slow this down. So that's the first way of doing it, is just through Fruity filter. If you're like programming your own drums, you have more control over like which part, like what sound, like if you only want to sidechain your kick instead of like the entire drums, then these next tips are going to be more helpful. So right now I'm only going to sidechain it to the kick, right? And then this drum beat, it has both like a kick and a snare. But I only want the sidechain effect to affect my kick. So this is where it's going to be more useful. So with this one specifically, we're going to use a peak controller. So what a peak controller does is it listens to like a peak of a specific sound, and then that activates like a controller. Right? You can see the peaks here. We're going to use the peak, the signals created from the peak, and we're going to link that to the volume knob of this. Let's link this. So as you can see, every time there's a kick, it pushes it up, right? But we don't want to push it up. We want to duck it down. So instead, so let's go back here, and then you see the controller part. We are going to invert it, so it goes the other way. You see that? And then now let's go to the P controller, and then just adjust these knobs accordingly. So bass, this is the starting point. So maybe you want to start it here, not like full all the way up, but like here maybe. And then the volume is how much it ducks it by, and then the decay is just like more like the timing, right? So what I like to do is do the volume at max first, so we can get a better idea of the timing. So I think the decay is a little fast right now, so maybe turn it down a little bit. So it goes back up a little slower. And turn the volume down a little bit. So it ducks the volume down every time. And let's add everything back in and see what it sounds like. You hear the movement in the bass? Pretty cool, right? So those are just another set of like cool things you could do if you know how to sidechain. The next set of tricks I want to talk about is stuff relating to automation. So with automation, you can kind of add more dynamic elements and movement to your stuff and change things over time. And I know a lot of you guys probably are familiar with the automation clips that you can use. Like if you wanted to automate like the master filter, you could just click create automation clip, and then if you set this down, you'll be able to see like the change happening. Like with the filter. Just makes the filter go down, right? Really simple automation clip. Most of you guys probably already know that. But I bet you what you didn't know maybe is that you could actually manually record your automation. So actually, let's get rid of this right now. Let's just get rid of that filter thing. And then I'll show you how we can actually manually record your automation. So let's say you wanted more control, right? And maybe you have your own controller and you have like a knob that you could like twist to like manually control it from your controller. But you could also just record it through here. So what we can do is go to this red button and then hit notes and automation. And then when you press play, and then you can like manually set this down. That's like a fade out, And then you can see it actually recorded the automation. So you can manually create fade outs and stuff like that. And, it doesn't have to be the filter. It could have been maybe like the delay or the reverb mix or all this cool stuff, even the pitch. Another cool thing you can do with automations is actually use a formula to control it. So let's just route this to a mixer. Oh, I just loaded in a different melody, right? And then this is like a C7, like a Yamaha C7 preset from Flex. But you see these different like things you can control, like space. Like it's like kind of like reverb, space, chorus, phaser. Just random things you can control, right? You can actually use a formula to control the movement of those different knobs. So if you go open to controller and you use a formula controller, what you can do is control certain elements of your sound, like with the space, chorus, and all that, and you can actually program a formula to control it. Pretty cool, right? Link the controller. Let's say I want to just play around with the chorus, right? And then link to controller, the formula controller that you just set up in here. By using a formula controller, you can set like different formulas to control the movement of certain like knobs. So let's just do like a basic sine, right? Like I don't know how good you guys are at math, but these different knobs correlate to like different things that they describe here. So for example, A is the bass level, B is like the range, so like how far the movement goes, and C is more like the timing of it, right? So if you if I show you right here, so the formula controller based on a sine wave is controlling the movement of that of the chorus. So say I want to slow it a little bit down, right? The movement, I don't want to go as fast. You can also control maybe like something like tone, right? So link to controller, go here. Let's reverse the direction. This is going. You can do like a random wave. So it's just super random. Just maybe increase the range. It just makes it sound a little trippier, like a saw wave. So those are just a few creative ways you can automate your sounds to give it more dynamics or just more motion and get more creative with whatever you're making right now. Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about sampling. So there's two tools that I primarily use when it comes to sampling stuff, and I use them kind of for different like purposes. One is Fruity Slicer and the other is SliceX. Fruity Slicer is really good. I actually have a few full videos on Fruity Slicer and what you can do. Link in the description below if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to use it. But like with Fruity Slicer, it's really great for like chopping melodies, right? So there's like one loop right here, right? If I load it in here, it's really easy. All you do is click this and then slice it to like the subdivision you want. So in this case, it's beats, and then you can, control the length of the time, which is really nice if you're like chopping at different tempos, right? So if this is a really fast tempo, like this 165, right, and you're only at like 106, then you want to be able to change the speed of your tempo to kind of match the actual project tempo. So in this case, it's 106, so I want to move it all the way up to like 106 so that the lengths don't just end right there. And you can also control the attack and decay time. So you hear like when I don't have it on, you hear like the kind of like the bzz, 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 like the the chopping. It's not smooth. So by adding an attack, you can kind of get rid of like those static, like those pops. You can also change the pitch, right? So if I want to do like 101, 500 or lower, it's really easy to do. Moral of the story, Fruity Slicer I primarily like to use for melodies because just of the simplicity and how easy it is to use, and it has all the tools that I basically need for slicing melodies. Now the next tool I want to use is SliceX. As you can see already from the start, it looks a little bit more complicated. You have more options and you have more things that you can do with SliceX. I like to primarily use it for slicing drums. So let's say you have like a drum loop, right? And you want to like change up the rhythm of the drums, or like you only have like a 4-bar drum and you want to make it sound more interesting rather than just repeating the 4 bars. Like this would be a really good tool to use for that. So as you can see, it's like really short loop. So instead of like looping this for the entire length of your song, what you can do is load it into SliceX and then it automatically chops it up for you. As you can see, like it sets the markers automatically. So what you can do is when you're in here, you can actually control which slices are being played. So you can kind of change up like the pattern of the drums, right? So instead of repeating like this one loop for the entire duration of the song, you can kind of like change it up in certain parts. So here. So you can see sometimes like the automatic slice doesn't automatically like start at the start of the sample. You can just really easily drag these markers manually. Like here, right here on this hi-hat. See how it's not like set right on the hi-hat? You can move these. With here, it's kind of hard. You can't really like move the samples. So I like SliceX more for like drums because it's like easier to see each individual chop, and especially with drums, you just want to rearrange the timing of the drums or like the location of the drums. It's a lot easier to like play like this. So those are the 5 tips that I have for you guys, just random FL Studio tips and tricks that you can use to up your game and make your music more creative and just have more tools to work with. If you found this video to be useful, please hit the subscribe button. I know at the beginning of the video I said I wasn't gonna post as much, but I'm still gonna post, and whatever I post is gonna be the utmost quality, like these tutorial videos and the video that I'm gonna post next week where I kind of talk about just like my real experience with music and like gems that I want to share with you guys so that you know what you're going into if you really want to step up your music and chase it like professionally or something, right? So thank you guys for your time. See you guys next week when I drop the video. Peace out. Ride with your girl, I wanna die with you, put your hand in mine, we gon' float up to the sky, shit, I'ma get fly. Hey. I'm not tryna ride, girl, I wanna slide, girl. Put your hand in mine, girl, we gon' put your hand in mine, girl, we gon' put your hand in mine. Baby, won't you ride with me, baby? Baby,
I'm not tryna ride, girl, I wanna slide, girl. Put your hand in mine, girl, we gon' put your hand